There we go.
Hello, welcome to the June meeting, our Juneteenth edition of the Philly MacAdmins Meetup. Because of the technical difficulties earlier, we went through a bunch of stuff already, but we are just about to go into our WWDC stuff, which is, of course, what anybody's tuning in for really wants. Well, first we'll talk about the conferences, and then we'll go to the WWDC. So the MacAdmins videos are up. The WWDC videos for all of the sessions that they filmed are up, including the keynote and the State of the Union for the OS State of the Unions. Of note, of course, there's lots of specific ones that affect MacAdmins and admins in general that you'll want to take a look at. Mac deployment has slides, not videos, posted and some other resources. That was just passed, and of course, Mac DevOps YVR. Mike's not here, so he can't give us his, his conference report. But videos of their sessions are now up, and there's some interesting ones that you should probably take a look at. Next up is PSU MacAdmins in about, what was it, 2 weeks now? 3 weeks? 3 weeks now. Yeah. So later this year, Mac Sysadmin, and of course, the Application User Conference, and the MacTech. And there are other conferences. I think QueryCon is happening right now. So it's a very specific focused conference. And now what we're all here for is WWDC. So we got the new version of macOS coming, Catalina, iOS 13, and iPad OS, which is something new. tvOS 13 on watchOS 6, a new Mac Pro after 6 years, and a new display after almost as long. So we'll go right into it. macOS Catalina. It's a lovely picture. So currently we're at beta 2, and if you're not testing, you should be testing right away. It's unofficial, but the bugs you file on beta 1, beta 2, and beta 3 have the best chance of being closed by GM. So the sooner you get testing, the sooner you file bugs, the better everyone else is off. Anything filed in late, like beta 4, beta 5, beta 6, will probably may end up in the .1 updates, but you should be testing. One thing that's not in the slides that I'll talk about now, because we're talking about testing, is Apple Seed for IT. It used to be essentially invite only. Your SE would recommend you, and then they'd send you an invite. And it was only like certain particular customers who get that. Now it's anybody who has an Apple Business Manager or Apple School Manager setup can register into Apple Seed with their managed Apple ID. So any managed Apple ID, for schools, it has to be like staff and or admin. Can't be students. But for Apple Business Managers, any Apple ID that's in the Apple Business Manager portal can now go to appleseed.apple.com and register and get into the Apple Seed program. And what that gives you is obviously access to the Catalina beta, and it also installs the feedback app and also gives you access to the feedback.apple.com, which is where you can track your feedbacks. They've changed sort of like the bug reporting system a bit, and it's still some kinks need to be worked out. But feedback is how Apple wants the feedback app, and the feedback app is how Apple wants you to submit your bugs for Catalina and pretty much everything else. If you haven't seen the feedback app, we may want to do something about that at some point. But essentially, you go in and you log in with that same Apple ID that you use to log into Appleseed, and it gives you an app thing and gives you like test plans. You can see the downloads, and you file your bug, it goes through, gives you steps and all that. They look for your environment variables. You need steps to reproduce. Step 1, step 2, step 3. What you expect to happen, what you actually got, and what you want to happen. And you spell all that stuff out. You submit feedback. The feedback system app then includes a sysdiagnose as well as anything else that might be pertinent. And you can add things like video or screenshots and just submit that all up to Apple. And you use the feedback assistant app and the feedback website to track that. And if you're not doing any of that now, if you have an IBM or ASM account, you should pester your SE or just try and log in and see if it works for you. But the more people testing, the better output. Yeah. So I think, Beta 2 just came out. Historically, it's been about 2 weeks or so between the betas. And so now's the time to get in before Beta 3, because after Beta 3, as we said, the chances of your bug, unless it's like super breaking bug, the chances of that getting fixed in GA is going to be pretty low. Also, anybody who uses Python, especially the built-in Python 2.7 with the PyObject-C bridge, that is officially deprecated. It's included in Catalina, at least it's in the betas so far. But it will not be in a future version of the OS. So what that means for people who write to the built-in OS Python is that you're probably going to have to learn how to ship your own Python. Fortunately, our friend Greg Nagel, has a GitHub project called Relocatable Python that will help you do that. And I'm sure there'll probably be some blog posts from other MacAdmins telling you how to actually do that. But that's coming too. Oh, and I skipped over the one thing. So the new default shell of Catalina is Z shell, going away from Bash. The thing is that in Bash,
can we go back to Bash? Is there an option?
Yeah. Well, if you upgrade, your shell stays.
Okay.
Well, it'll prompt you.
You can still path it to bin Bash.
Yeah, for now.
Yes, it'll prompt you to change it.
Any shape. Better.
Well, the thing about Bash is that Bash on macOS is ancient.
Yeah.
It's not even the most current. Not even there's Bash 4. We're still on Bash 3.
It's
whatever. So right. So they want to go away from Bash because the Bash 4 license is the license they don't like. And
GPL v3.
Yes, and Z shell is a modern shell and does a couple things that Bash that gets installed that currently doesn't do. So it was easier to switch to Z shell than convince legal that they should adopt the GPL license.
Apparently, used it.
But the thing about yes, I've actually logged in the Z shell, switched over on a couple of my machines, and no big differences yet. But there are some issues with globbing using the asterisk, star, and the @ sign.
Yep.
So here's the thing: if you script anything and just do the shebang /bin/sh on Catalina on the higher, especially on new ones, it will run it in Z shell. So if you are expecting certain Bash interpretations, you will want to change your shebang to be explicitly /bin/bash.
Yep.
And because that's the safer option, because Bash will at least be still in Catalina. future OS may not include any of these. Any of the built-in binaries like Ruby or Perl or anything like that. So, but yeah, so you are going to have to do a lot of testing with your scripts, and I know most of us have a lot of scripts. I have a lot of scripts that need to be tested in Z Shell to see if they can be converted. And hopefully the good news is that I only have to change a couple of things or rework them or just redo them. The Python thing is going to be more of an endeavor because you're going to have to ship your own Python. But the plus side on that is that anybody who installs Homebrew will be able to mess with your scripts at that point if you're shipping your own Python, putting all your scripts there. So yeah, you can't just default to Python bad. Homebrew can't mess up your Python stuff going forward. So also, 32-bit apps do not run in Catalina. Period. Shocking. So there are apparently a couple of VPN clients that are still 32-bit. I think Pulse Secure is one I've heard lots of people complaining about in Catalina. At least the versions that they were running. But there's some other stuff, I think, and there was some other stuff that was going on. So if anybody has any 32 bits applications, they need to either need to get the vendor to get a 64-bit version or find a different solution. Also coming in Catalina, we will get activation lock as an option for T2 Macs. And so if you are, so you will have the option, if you do the activation lock on T2 Macs, you will have the, if you have an NDM, you have the option to deactivate that. As opposed to, I think new Macs that will release with Catalina will have that automatically enabled. So I think
it'll enable on any T2 Mac that gets upgraded to Catalina if you're signed in with an Apple ID and have Find My Mac enabled.
Yes, that's what it is. Yes. So that's yes. So look for fun times with activation. Especially when somebody wipes the Mac and leaves the activation lock on and then turns it back in.
Yep.
How does that work? Like, is it a firmware thing, or is it?
It's definitely a firmware thing.
So yeah.
Like a firmware lock? Is it almost like
it's the same as an iPhone.
Yeah, activation lock, same as iPhone.
So basically, if somebody wipes the device, they won't be able to reactivate it.
Yeah. So you will need to have exit strategies for your Macs now to make sure that the user, before they leave your organization, removes their Apple ID from the Mac.
Or you just block.
You might be able to distribute a single managed Apple ID.
Yeah.
In some kind of configuration program, hoping so you can totally lock it down. They can't get to
That's
Apple.
probably, you could. I don't know if I would recommend.
Apple, if you're listening, he doesn't speak for all now.
It's just your single managed Apple ID.
That breaks and someone takes advantage of it.
As soon as somebody finds out what that password is. Single point of failure. So we have more TCC goodness in Catalina. TCC protections now extend to desktops and documents, as well as cloud and external drives. So, and the latter is, well, it's basically for any app or process that wants access to those locations. And as we discovered with TCC, what apps asked for may not make any sense whatsoever. So you have to be aware of what it does. So if you need to whitelist it, because if you need to whitelist it, you can. So, the other big news is that Apple has Apple has won the war on kernel extensions. Their passive-aggressive war on kernel extensions, and they are officially deprecated. Catalina is the last version of macOS where kernel extensions will run, as they say, without compromise, which means they're not going to disable, which means essentially Apple is not going to sabotage the kernel extensions. So system security extensions and driver extensions, which I've talked about a little bit later, they're going to replace kernel extensions. The thing to know about system extensions and security extensions is that as opposed to the kernel extensions, these all run in user space. But they have APIs that talk to the same functions that people were using kernel extensions for. Specifically for like security, for AV and DLP stuff, there'll be APIs for those applications to do some similar kind of things that they were doing using kernel extensions, but just in the way that Apple wants them to use it, and also won't affect and won't brick a machine or kernel panic a machine going forward. So. The other thing is that in Catalina, if you install a kernel extension, you're going to have to reboot before it will even load. Like some kernel extensions can load without a reboot now, but now all of them you will have to reboot before they load. The other thing that if you watched the, I think it was the security presentation when they talked about this, or was it the managing presentation?
We don't know.
I don't know. I don't remember. But Apple has come out and said is that you should encourage your vendor to switch to this sooner rather than later, or like this is the strongest statement they've ever made anything like this. They said choose another vendor.
Yeah, I love that one.
Yeah. And that's
I've already sent it to my security team with that highlight. It says, "Hey guys."
Yes. So yes, I mean Apple's never really made any sort of statement about telling you which vendor you should use for what product, but they really want to get rid of texts like really badly. So they have been for years, and now they're actually doing it. So printer drivers, and people still make printer drivers that are kernel extensions in 2019. But they get their own extension called a driver extension, Dext, and you can probably infer why there's not an abbreviation for a system extension or a security extension. But the driver stuff, because like for things like audio video workstations, also install kernel drivers. But the same thing, it's like these will run in user space, and they have APIs that will hook into the system so that they can do the same things that they used to be able to do in kernel extensions. But essentially, printer drivers are also going away because I think even the regular printer drivers are also going away because they're talking about deprecating MacAdmin as well. So, but more on that as we all know more. The other big news is that if anybody's used Enterprise Connect, that portions of the Enterprise Connect app are now being built into the OS. This is a Kerberos extension as part of the Kerberos extension. So it's essentially the ability to sort of to soft join using Enterprise Connect, which is the same thing that Nomad does as well. That'll be built in. You will use a configuration profile to configure it, and it will do and automatically launch. You'll get like a little key in the menu bar, and it will do like the management of the password as well as getting the Kerberos together. So
They're going to Sherlock Newman.
I don't know about that. So another big thing that they announced in conjunction with this is automated device enrollment, formerly known as DEP, can now be branded and gets hooks into modern auth. So when you're doing the whole setup assistant, this is for iOS as well as macOS. You going through the whole setup system in the beginning, and you get that the authentication window where it says your organization can manage this device. You know that instead of just the basic auth, you can now set it up to actually have your logo show up at that point, and then can redirect to your SSO MFA authentication page. So it isn't just basic auth, which should make security and everybody happy. And they also talked about SSO extensions for apps. And this is essentially allowing apps to generate keys using secure enclave for better security for that. In addition to, Apple also talked in the WWDC about signing with Apple. That's primarily for, I think, iOS, and they were talking about that primarily in the iOS and iPadOS context. That also applies, and I think it's also part of this as well. But more as we know more. The other thing they noticed.
Sign in with Apple is separate from the SSO extensions.
Okay.
They are not compatible.
So, see, we know more as we know more. So moving on, user enrollment was also announced, and this is essentially data separation for BYOD specifically, but they're calling it user enrollment. And essentially, they're containerizing your organization data for Apple services. That's iCloud, Drive, and Notes. And then they'll also containerize like your enterprise apps and its data that gets installed through VPP, like Box, Dropbox, Outlook, that sort of thing. So that also gives your organization the ability to, when that person is no longer needed, you can just cleanly grab all that stuff, or wipe all that stuff without touching the rest of their device. So, for those of you who do BYOD, this is probably very exciting. So, I talked about this before, but now it's official. Manage Apple IDs for business. This has been a thing for the education side for a while, but yeah, manage Apple IDs for business is how they deliver the user enrollment. So, and you can federate the ABN to, I think it's Azure AD right now, but others will come eventually, like Google, Okta, and Ping, and all those.
So they won't even, we might not have to use like a third party?
Well, this is for BYD.
Okay.
So, and so if you use this, you will have to use the Manage Apple ID has to end in your domain email address, which means if you have users who already have an Apple ID with your company or organizational email address, there's going to be some. You're going to have to get them to change that, or yeah, because you can only do it. Yeah, you can only do it this way. So, but there's some gatekeeper improvements. Basically, at this point, I think, if I remember, it is that gatekeeper will now quarantine everything that comes from the App Store. They quarantine everything that comes from outside the App Store if you download it. If you are installing through something like Jamf or Monkey, it doesn't flip the quarantine flag. But anything else will flip the quarantine flag. So it does things. They check for notarization and do all that other good stuff. There was something else that I don't remember.
it goes back and checks again to make sure that the app or the executable in the bundle haven't been messed with since the last time it checked, which it doesn't do that.
Right, and this also requires, so this is also a benefit of notarization. If you notarize everything from the binary on up to the package, the gatekeeper won't need to hit the internet check. And that may be an issue for some things to install or not install. So, like if you don't have an internet connection and you have something that's not notarized, it may not get past gatekeeper in some instances.
It actually has to be notarized and stapled.
Right, notarized and stapled.
The stapling is what allows it to launch offline.
Yep. So yes, there's so much stuff I can't really fit it all in my head. So fortunately, there is a link that we're including here that aggregates a lot of the stuff, and there's like, this is from Mr. McIntosh, and links to a bunch of everybody else's things from like Robert Hammond's initial post. Charles Edge has a post, links to all the different WWDC sessions, and the thing I forgot to put on about this. Apple now, if you go to developer.apple.com and device management, they have documentation on the things that they have done in their developer style. It's a great first start. That's all I'll say. Yes. But yes. So moving on, we have iOS 13 and iPad OS. So yeah, so it's a big thing that they're essentially splitting off iPad as its own separate version of iOS. And that's probably going to come down to a couple of things we'll talk about. But the big thing is obviously you get full true dark mode in iOS 13 and iPad OS, which is I'm sure going to be very popular. Apple's been doing a lot of performance improvements on the iOS 12 and other OSs, and this just continues that. We get things like a swiping keyboard now. They redid the Reminders app to look fancier and work better. They made updates to Mail, Notes, and Safari, and they've completely redone Apple Maps and made them better. And the big thing is that they've combined Find My Friends and Find My iPhone or my device into a new Find My app. Just kind of trails off the end, so Find My whatever. And we talked about signing with Apple earlier. That's a big thing that comes in there. So that is where they will essentially generate a temporary email address for you to sign up for things on the internet without actually using your real email address. So essentially it will be a temporary email address that things will get back to you, and so you don't have to give companies your real email address. Essentially, if anybody has, junk mail accounts, that you can stop using them eventually. And there's some other privacy enhancements as well. External storage. So you can do SD cards and some flash drives. I think it's specifically for iPad OS. I'm not entirely sure if it's for iOS devices like iPhones.
I've heard it works with iPhones, but
yeah, I know it definitely works with iPad OS because they were talking about it. I guess we'll find out eventually.
Is it just on certain iPads too, right?
Yeah, I think it's only just certain iPads, like the newer ones.
Like the USB-C iPad?
Yeah.
Right. It looks like you have to plug in directly to it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mentioned it earlier, but now there's a version of the Kerberos extension that will come to iPad and iOS. So you can do things, use a Kerberos ticket and do legacy SSO. If you still have legacy SSO with some internal networks, the iPad or iOS device can do that. Not sure how useful that is, but I think you can also do certificate authentication, which is much more useful.
You can also connect to SMB3 shares,
Oh, yes, SMB3 shares.
On the iPad?
new iPad OS.
Yeah.
Because that was going
With files.
Yeah, so,
iOS 12.
so one of the things about iPad and the way they're sort of positioning it is I think they're positioning iPad to be sort of desktop-ish. One of the things that they talked about that I don't know how MDM vendors are going to handle yet is that the iPad OS will identify as a Mac in certain contexts.
Browser agent.
Yeah, so that may be an issue for some MDM vendors. So,
Instead of $8, it's $16.
well, beyond that, I mean, how they identify it in order to do what type of enrollment, that may affect that as well. Okay, tvOS 13 and watchOS 6, not really updates, but a new version. So tvOS gets a new home screen, gets multi-user support, which I think is maybe beneficial in the EDU context. I can't think off the top of my head where multi-users is a thing on enterprise setting. Or in a family context as well. You can use that home version. Apple Music and Apple Arcade are like sort of been revamped in that, and also a new 4K screensavers, which will probably look amazing on a 4K TV or better. Also, this is a big enough announcement to get its own line. Support for Xbox and PlayStation controllers for those of you who want to play games with your Apple TV. Or who will now play games on your Apple TV now that you can actually use a real controller. WatchOS gets new watch faces and enhanced Siri. And you can now access the App Store and the watch. That does things like activity trends and cycle tracking and hearing health. So the cycle tracking got a big applause during WWDC. And the new Return of the Cheese Grater. And this is a serious cheese grater. The new Mac Pro, 2019 Mac Pro. So you can get this configured with up to 28 cores. I think it comes in 8 days. But you can configure it for up to 28, which is amazing. You can configure a Mac Pro for a terabyte and a half of RAM. So again, which is amazing.
Say gig.
Yes, up to 4 terabytes of storage built in, which is quite a bit. Not amazing because if you could do like 16 terabytes, that would be amazing. So 4 terabytes is I have that in the break like
SSD?
They're all,
Oh, yeah.
They're like 4 SSDs or what? 2
Two.
SSDs distributed?
two terabyte SSDs.
It's the same as the iMac Pro.
Okay.
Different connector.
So this is going to be very popular. 8 PCI Express slots, expansion slots. If you get nothing in it, you have 8, and you can put whatever you want in. Most configurations with the Mac, Mac expansion thing, something like that. I have it written down. It standard comes with 4 Thunderbolt 3 ports, 2 USB-A, old school USB-A, and 2 10 gigabit Ethernet. It says GB, but everything's capitalized on that. It's actually gigabit because there's no gigabyte Ethernet yet. Yes, the Mac Pro expansion module. It's essentially a digital connection that goes on the Mac Pro and does like a whole lot of things. Because it comes with those ports, but with the Mac Pro expansion module, you can add more ports if you need them.
Because in one PCI.
And an additional slot,
Yeah, an additional slot. It'll take
which allows for a bunch of stuff, including additional Thunderbolt ports.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
So you can get this
I don't know
configured.
why I'm talking about it.
You can get this configured with the Radeon Pro Vega 2 Duo, which is the super high-end Radeon Pro card. You can get the lesser Radeon Pro cards in there if you don't care about the video. But you can get, not only can you get one, you can configure it with two. And for amazing, video processing capabilities. And with the Apple Afterburner, that allows you to work natively in 4K and 8K video without having to do any sort of conversion. And they demoed that live, and it was like really impressive. And I don't do enough on video stuff, whatever, to be like to really rock the whole revolution, however revolutionary that is. But people tell me that's revolutionary. So, and of course, it starts at base model starts at $6,000. So I think people were going through. There's a couple of articles I read where you can configure it and end up spending anywhere from $35,000 to $50,000 when all said and done. So yes, you can have a luxury car, or you can have a Mac Pro.
You buy 50 stands.
And that would be just Mac Pro. Display is sold separately, which we're going to talk about next.
Buy 50 stands and have a car.
The Pro Display XDR. So they call it XDR because there's the HDR standard, and this is better, so they call it XDR because it's a screen. So, and cue like
Goes up to 11.
cue the 90s, bro shouting extreme in the background. So it's 32-inch, 6K Retina display, which probably looks amazing. 1600 nits of brightness, which if I understood that more, I'd probably be more impressed. So and 10-bit color depth. So short is that it's amazing looking, even though I've never seen it yet. And the matching Pro stand will allow you to rotate it from horizontal to vertical, portraits to landscape, as they say. So if you do portrait, you can do all your coding. If you do landscape, you can do all your video editing or audio editing.
Available for $200.
So you can get a Visa mount, and you can get and so the Pro Display starts at its own at $5,000. And yes, the stand is sold separately for an additional $1,000.
It does come with a stand. Crappy stand. Like you buy.
Oh, it does?
Yes,
Yes.
it doesn't
Is that
come with
right?
nothing.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, it
Wow.
doesn't come with it doesn't come with a box,
I
just
thought I
a
had to
screen. It
put it
comes
on,
with
like-
just a crappy
No,
stand.
no.
You
You're
reams
supposed
of
to open it
paper.
up again.
No, it comes with it comes with just basically, it's not the Pro stand, it's just a stand.
Yeah.
You can't rotate it, it does not move fancy.
It'll hold it at least?
Yes.
Yes.
What are we gonna do?
The internet outrage
Someone give me
didn't cover
that.
that.
No.
Oh, but if you
Just
go
buy a
searching,
Visa.
there is apparently Panasonic makes a stand that's $4,000.
Oh, yeah.
So it is a box.
So yes, and the Visa
For like
mount
an 80-inch plasma or something like that.
and the Visa mount is $200. So,
That's a deal.
That's a fee.
so yeah, if you have like a wall, you
But
can
it pops
get a
right
couple of these and just pop it right on the wall, and we have amazing display. So just both of these, if you got both of them, you're spending at least $10,000, which is the base model.
Yeah.
So this is not, and they did mention at WWDC that there was going to be a rack mount version of the Mac Pro, but based on what they showed us on there, it's obviously not a data center
It's a
mounting. You're probably going to be a half-length rack that just fit in comfortably. You put in a data center rack, but it's got no redundancy, so your data center ops people are going to say no.
Right.
But you could put it in like a closet rack or something, or even just like a
Or
two-port
media rack or something.
media rack, exactly. which is going to appeal to some people. But this is clearly designed for people who work in audio-visual production and creation specifically. Yes, you can probably throw one in your server closet, and it will run things, run server things, even though server is going away. And you have to install all the services you want.
You should get fired if you do that.
So, but I have heard people talking about getting one of these in for build farm, and they'll probably replace a bunch of Mac Minis, depending on how they configure it. It could be like a couple, or it could be like a dozen. So that's a possible use case. You might see that in something like an enterprise or educational environment. But yeah. Also, I don't think many people's finance departments will even approve the VP asking for the $6,000 monitor with the Pro Stand. It's possible, but I'm sure that there will probably be some discussions about it at the very least. They're not going to sign off on it.
If you need a reference monitor, you're going to be spending that much or more.
Right. So there's definitely in the industries with any sort of post-production or even pre-production, any audio video production. This will include enterprises too, like NBC, CBS, ABC, any of the video companies. There's definitely a use case for these boxes. This is what it's primarily geared towards. So, but this is not going to small business at all. So, as a shout out to my former career as a small to medium business installer. And I think
email will look really good that
so yeah.
Or you get
And
code
that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
So for the live streams, folks, we talked about some of the stuff that was new, like how Mojave 10.14.5 patch zombie load, and we talked about the Firefox 0 day, which is basically even if you are or aren't managing Firefox, you should be patching Firefox as of today. And a few other things, but basically we've talked about WWDC stuff. Before the live stream came on, we talked about all the NDA stuff, so we're not going to talk about it now. If you weren't in the room, you missed out. But that's pretty much about it. Anybody have anything they want to bring up for WWDC related or non-WWDC related?
Well, just the NYCU Metro JAMP NYCU Metro meeting is next Tuesday in New York City.
They usually hold it at the Apple Executive Briefing Center.
Yeah, it's
Fifth Avenue and 16th
5th and
Street.
16th. It's a block away from the PATH station at 14th Street, or actually 2 blocks away. It will be packed this time. So
Yeah.
you can't even sign up for it now on Jamp Nation. It just says filled. So, but they don't turn people away. It'll be standing room only. So if you're gonna go, get there early. It's from 4:30 to 6:30. And they will feed you.
So I think, I mean, we've covered a lot of the stuff there. They'll probably have Christos there, as well as a couple of Jamp folks.
They normally have Christos there. They normally have Mark there. They normally have the Jamp heavies.
Yeah, so
And they try to get some presenter, whether, they'll try to get some vendor. Like last time I went, it was a ServiceNow plugin for Jamf. Starts with an A. It was fantastic, but it's so much money you can't even consider getting it. Starts with an A, like Ariel or something like that. It's got, if you use ServiceNow, it's got unbelievable features, but the plugin was ridiculously expensive. So
I've been to a couple of these. Neat. You can get up to New York. It's probably a little short notice for a lot of people. Because going up to New York for a day is not for the faint of heart. But yeah, if you can make it up, they'll probably be talking more about the stuff we talked about in depth, and they'll have, as I said, there'll be some Apple folks that'll be able to talk more about some of the things we talked about.
Do the live stream.
They do not.
They do not.
They do not live stream, so they will be able to talk about NDA stuff to the room.
And they do, actually.
Yes.
They really do.
So if you want to learn more,
It's
if you make it, it's definitely worth attending.
get there early.
You know, even though it's New York. And, you know,
There's going to be well over 100 people there, so get there early if you want to go. I think it's great, so.
what, New York?
Yeah.
New York.
Having lived there for almost 10 years.
It smells good.
So it depends. It depends. So
We have better pizza.
it's been a while. It was long enough. I was there yesterday. It was long enough. It's way long enough that I've forgotten how crazy traffic in New York is.
Yes. From the, you saw, I ran into Joel at the airport when I was leaving for San Diego. So it was just like, I see him across and Joel! He wasn't wearing a bright orange shirt.
If there's nothing else, I think we're just gonna call it a live stream, and the slides will be posted with post live stream. So everything else we talked about has links to that, so you can follow up on.
When do you normally put that up, Serge? How soon?
That all depends on Mike. He's not here. He's not here, so we're going to throw him.
Mike puts it up? Mike puts it up normally?
Yes.
Okay, I'll check with him.
It's usually within a few days.
Yeah,
Sometimes-
usually within a few days.
Sometimes if he gets a little sidetracked
Yes.
with work.
So as again, since he's not here,
Okay.
ping Mike
I will ping Mike.
to get the slides up sooner rather than
That's fine.
I gotta run.
Or just nag us on Slack.
Yes, or just nag us on Slack.
You.
Later. All right. So until next time, this is Serge signing off.